Hello, lovely people. It's another week, another episode of Outlander. This time we're on episode 3 called Temperance, but I would probably call it Fergus opening up. And Massady and Fergus should, they deserve awards for this episode, basically. So the things that I liked about this episode, I feel like Roger is really coming into his own. We didn't get to see as much of him, but the bits that we did see were very, very impactful. And I feel like there's been a real character growth for Roger. The way that he jumps in to save the child without even asking any questions, and the way that he growls, Jama, after he finds out that the boys were trying to check the superstition that the devil's spawn would float or sink or something like that. And it was just really powerful. And then how he dealt with it shows that he's really growing in his confidence as a man of that era. And I mean, through no fault of his own, he was just a product of the era that he grew up in, and he just wasn't capable, really, to survive in the backlands of North Carolina. But he's really coming along, and you can see his confidence growing as part of the family as well. And I really liked the scenes where you had him, Claire, Jamie, and Fergus in there. I enjoy the family scenes, normally the ones that are in a family setting, like a dining room or a kitchen. It's the family dynamics that I enjoy the most about the TV show, and that's because in the books, that is very central to the books, the family dynamics. And of course, because you're getting the point of views of the people, you're getting their internal monologues as well. And I think that the shows, they do a good job of trying to condense that. And speaking of which, I have noticed that so far we've had 3 episodes in this season. And it's reminded me a lot of season 1, where they used to really try to recreate scenes from the book into actual scenes in the TV show, almost like they're giving us some fan service. And I kind of feel like in the last couple of seasons, they sort of had forgotten to do that. And it's quite nice. I feel like there's a subtle change in direction in that way. So there were several things that happened in this episode that were just exactly harkening back to some of the things in the books. And I thought that that was a nice touch. In particular, Jamie playing with the vroom vroom. I thought that that was quite cool. And, I just felt a little bit like when Marcelly was asking Brianna, why do they call it the vroom? It's like, wouldn't it be really nice if they could tell Marcelly and Fergus where they come from? It's like that would be really fascinating to play with, because with Marcelly, throughout the episode, we also see how her relationship is very strong with Claire and with Brie. So Brie actually invents something that is quite useful to Marcelly. So in the last episode, we had Brie inventing the matchsticks, and Marcelly just being like, yeah. And then she actually invents a spinning wheel for Marcelly to use for creating yarn that she can then use for weaving. And, Marcelly is like really super, super impressed. And Brie kind of like has this almost like, oh, I'm a little sister, I'm proud of my big sister. So I thought that family dynamic was really quite cute. You had, the haunted milk, which was really quite funny, and how Roger dealt with that. But so many sad things. 2 moments that gave me lumps in my throat that made me feel really quite sad, and both of them had to do with Fergus. And just like, I'm just blown away by how great an actor Cesar Domboy is, the guy who plays Fergus. I mean, first of all, he's devastatingly handsome. He's got like that stature and the dark hair and, those eyes and stuff like that. And when he's actually giving the emotion, my goodness, especially when he's talking about his fears for Henri Christian, and when he explains that he actually knew a dwarf back when he was in Paris, you understand, you can empathize with that, because he's seen the life trajectory of a dwarf in that particular era, contrasted with Claire's very optimistic, oh, it will be fine. And for Claire, she's got the value system of somebody who is from the future, even though even though Fergus doesn't know that, but I feel like it's a really good contrast, which shows the naivety that sometimes Claire approaches things in this particular era versus the people who've got the lived experiences of having to deal with this. Because, you know, as humans, we're constantly evolving, constantly changing. You know, what the wise people of 100 years ago thought was okay, we sort of look back on and we laugh at it and we're like, how could you do that? And similarly, 100 years from now, they're going to be looking back at us and saying, how could I do that? And so forth. And that's how it goes. So I thought it was like quite a good contrast of that, and really incredibly, incredibly well acted, well performed. I got lost in that scene and I got lumps in my throat about that. And then the second one had Marsali and Fergus, when Marsali just dropped truth bomb after truth bomb, linking back to Leary turning up again for the second time, and we get to see this relationship that Marsali has with these two mother figures in her life, right? She trusts Claire. She absolutely loves Claire to the point where the man who abused Claire, she killed him stone blank. And in this episode, she actually says that she's not. She doesn't feel bad. She expected it to be haunted. I'm not too sure how I feel about that aspect of it, the fact that she seemed to be quite proud and unconflicted about the fact that she took a life, but she's also quite adamant that she doesn't want to be like her mother. In the last episode, there's a line that she says where she feels really bad for having tried to hit Fergus, because she says, I've got a temper like my mother. And she says that in a way that she isn't proud of it. And then in this one, you know, she talks about how she watched her mother stay with alcoholic partners and how she doesn't want that for herself, to the point where we know how much she loves Fergus. And she even, you know, at the beginning of that scene, at the beginning of that conversation, when Fergus has broken the promise to stay sober, you know, when she says, you're better than this, my love, you know, they've got my love, mon cher. And he says no, but she is cold enough and, you know, self-preservation enough to say, no, if I can't, you know, I'll have a full man or none at all, which shows how much she loves him. And I think that the Marsali and Fergus partnership is so great because she really challenges him, pushes him, reminds him that he is much more than what he can think he is, in terms of the fact that he lost his hand and what have you. And she just won't accept that from him as an excuse to not be the mate that he's always been to her, you know. Almost like she's saying, you can't have a pity party, you know, you can't, we need to get, you know, you need to get past this. You're better than this. And I think that sometimes that's what you need in a partnership. You need somebody who challenges you to be better, to go past the, you know, the self-inflicted boundaries that you think that, oh, it's like this or it's like that and what have you. So I thought that that was like so beautifully done. And what else? The other thing that I really enjoyed was the scene when Tom Christie was getting his hand fixed by Claire and how he didn't want the ether. And honestly, like, Sam Hewn is doing such a great job with Jamie this year. Just the way that his eyes, when Tom said he doesn't want the ether, the way his eyes got kind of like look up at Claire, and he makes the split-second decision that he's going to be reading the Bible verses. It was just so beautifully done. The entente cordiale between Claire, Tom, and Jamie is just really great. And you kind of feel like, oh, they're about to build the bridges. Things are going to go well. But then Claire, oh my gosh, I'm getting really tired of seeing Claire make really bad judgment calls. Number one, for somebody who's uber religious like Tom, she should have known that she doesn't rock up to him in the middle of the night with her hair all sultry down in her nightdress. Really bad judgment call. And then number two, when he's opened up and actually said that, you know, he used to think that fiction was evil, she has to give him, of all of the books that she has on her bookshelf, and we know from the books that, you know, she's got a bookcase full of books, full of the classics, full of the Greek tragedies, the things like that. She has to give him Tom Jones. And Tom Jones is a very kind of, it's like a bawdy kind of book, you know? And she has to give him that of all the books that she could have given him. I just thought, I yeah, I had a little bit of an eye roll there, and understandably, he was offended. I don't like the Tom Christie character. I do think that they've done more with him in the series than in the books. It took me a while to get used to, because physically he's different to the way that he's described in the books, but I'm kind of coming around to appreciating him. But yeah, I was just like, oh, for goodness sake, Claire, could you have better judgment, please? And so he doesn't take really well to it. And then we've got the really weird interactions of Malva with the men of the Ridge. And hands off to the actress who plays Malva there, because she does a very good combination of seductive and creepy at the same time. And yeah, I'm just kind of like, please stay away from Ian. Please stay away from Ian. I know that in the books they don't actually end up together or anything like that, but it was just really, really creepy. The entire time I was just like, cringing. But it was quite interesting to hear Ian open up about his sort of like fake dilemma where he doesn't know what he actually is anymore. So quite interesting. And we have Lizzie being mentioned with the Beardsley twins. Quite curious to see how that goes along. And then, of course, the biggest thing was the ending, which was quite, it was quite hard. I want to say heart-wrenching, but by this point I'd had a lot of heart-wrenchingness, so I think I was a little bit heart-wrenched out. But it was really quite interesting to see Jamie being in father mode with Fergus. So we always get Jamie with Roger, Jamie sometimes with Ian, but we actually very rarely get Jamie with Fergus. And, Jamie finds Fergus about to off himself, and Jamie basically reminds him that he's got a lot to give, a lot to be in the world, and that it doesn't have anything to do with what he can do and with what he can give. So there's some really, really beautiful words. My favorite parts about Jamie in this episode, apart from the Tom Christie reading the Bible, was seeing Jamie the grandpa. And this is something that I feel like the TV show has always been skint on. That in the books, he adores being a grandpa so much, especially with Jamie, because Jamie for him was the opportunity to kind of like raise a breed that he couldn't do. So there's a lot of stuff in there about him being a grandpa to Jamie and teaching Jamie the ways of being a man and things like that. And it's really great because Roger, try as he might, because he's somebody who grew up in a completely different era and a different time, he's not able necessarily to teach Jamie all of these things that just come easily and naturally to Jamie. So it was really lovely to see him do the grandpa thingy, and the really, really sweet words that he said to Jamal, which are very impactful, where he says to him, Henri Christian belongs to you. He's your little brother and you need to protect him. So really, really good. But the three MVPs for this one, definitely Masley and Fergus. Their storyline, really, really great. Roger, doing really well. Very keen to see where they're taking him with this. And, I didn't actually notice this, but he's got like a really furry beard thing going. I don't know what that's about. So, yeah, that was the thing about it. Now, there were a few weird things that I didn't like. I didn't like the CGI that they did with the basket going over the rapids. That was just, I don't know what they were trying to do there. And then there were some really weird cuts that happened with the redcoats, where he just was showing the back of the redcoats and it was really weird and it threw me out. And I don't understand why they tacked on the guns thing at the end of that episode. It didn't even make sense. And even in terms of weather, we've just seen Claire and Jamie, and it's wintry. It's winter, there's snow on there, and then it jumps to the next scene. There's no snow, everything seems to be melted over, and they don't seem to be winter things. And again, with the time, it feels really weird. I can't place the time because Tom Christie's hand was completely healed, right? A scar takes a lot longer to heal. You're looking at weeks, a month even for that to go over that. And speaking of that scar, we end up with Tom Christie beating up Malva with that. And it comes back again to what I said last week about the tiger. Do you save the tiger who will then go up into the mountain and kill the other animals, or do you leave it? And basically, I think that's why there's the Hippocratic Oath, which is that they realized very early on, thousands of years ago, that if you allowed doctors to think about what a person wants to potentially use their life for, they probably wouldn't save a lot of lives with this. So I thought that that was quite a interesting an interesting juxtaposition of, Claire saving this life only for it to make a nightmare, a misery for two people, for Malva and for her brother, who was hearing the abuse and obviously quite distressed about it. So overall, quite a good episode. I definitely think that out of the 3 episodes so far, it's definitely been the best, and that's in part because of the Massey and Fergus issues. I love what they're doing with Massey. Absolutely love what they're doing with her. And I hope that they carry forward in this vein. So yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts. Quite a lot of highs, a few tearjerker moments, but also a few lightly moments as well. So yeah, that's it. I will see you next week after episode 4. Until then, bye.